It's 4:20 somewhere, and right now that somewhere is right here. So hello and welcome to the Cannabist Show. My name is producer Vince, and here's your host, Ricardo Baca.
Vince, what's up, man?
What's up,
thank
brother?
you for that. To everybody joining us today, I want to say welcome to the Cannabist Show, where we talk about all things weed.
That's all things.
That is the serious marijuana news and the fun stuff as well. In fact, if you pop onto thecannabist.co right now, you can read stories about the very complicated behind the scenes of Massachusetts recreational pot initiative.
It's wicked hard right now.
It is wicked hard, and about the new reality of musicians partnering with cannabis companies to create their own personalized and self-branded strains of weed.
I have a video about that coming out soon too.
Oh man, it's a good one too. And more important marijuana news out of Arizona, North Dakota, Hawaii, Texas, and elsewhere.
Texas? Like past Austin?
Like past Austin. Producer Vince, how you doing, man?
You know, it's another day in paradise. I'm bringing that one back because I was at the Sublime with Rome concert a couple weeks ago, and someone mentioned that they missed me saying that. So just one time and only for that person, I'll say it now. How have you been, Ricardo?
Oh, that's great, man. You know, you mentioned the Sublime with Rome, the musicians' tie-ins with weed. Vince's video on from that day at Red Rocks is a blast. So some exclusive footage of soundcheck interviews with Eric Wilson from Sublime and of course, Rome. As well.
He's a cool fucking dude.
But yeah, I'm doing well, man. Loved the video. You know, we'll definitely, people can check it out at the Cannabist. But Vince, I think it is that time. Are you ready for the week in weed?
Yeah, let's do this week in weed, brother. Let's pick up the energy for it.
All right, all right. One more time with feeling. Here we are. We're starting this week in weed in Orlando. Where Democrats recently met and advanced the most progressive platform in the party's history. And part of that progressive platform, of course, is a, quote, reasoned pathway to future legalization of marijuana. And it's also a call for the drug to be rescheduled under the Controlled Substances Act.
And what's really fascinating about this move is that it's a major victory for supporters of Bernie Sanders, who finally endorsed Hillary Clinton for the presidential nomination just a few days later.
I know, right? You know, it was a tense moment at this Democratic meeting, according to the reporters and delegates who were there. But at first, the language about cannabis was very broad, with an emphasis on pot research and states' rights. Then the Sanders supporters, they argued that marijuana should be completely descheduled entirely, so that would make pot like alcohol or tobacco. But as that very amendment was headed for defeat, it was about to be voted down, some committee members proposed something of a middle ground. Not descheduling, but rescheduling marijuana with this pathway to federal legalization.
Yeah, middle ground by the skin of their teeth. The vote was 81 for and 80 against. And after a brief objection, the party members moved on to other issues, making for this historic pot platform.
You know, and of course, not all legalization advocates are happy about this result.
Nope.
It is reform. If rescheduling happens, that's reform. I had a really obnoxious argument with a guy on Facebook this week. It's still reform. I understand a lot of you want descheduling, but, you know, at least in this one meeting where they were setting the Democratic platform, you know, that was not going to pass, and this barely did, and that's where we're at right now. Vince, let's move along. Elsewhere in the week in weed, the activists behind a Colorado initiative that would have limited the THC in retail pot, edibles, and concentrates, they are withdrawing the controversial Amendment 139 after the Anti-Legalization Coalition announced their proposed 139. The cannabis industry created a coalition to fight it, and the industry's fundraising and campaigning swayed their opponents to drop the fight.
Amendment 139 would have limited the potency of all recreational marijuana products at just 16%. And it would have also added warnings to labels saying marijuana can cause, quote, permanent loss of brain abilities. The industry raised more than $300,000 in only a few months to fight the amendment, and they were psyched when it was pulled. A representative of the industry's Colorado Health Research Council told us, quote, "This was an ill-conceived initiative that would have denied medicine to veterans and patients, undermined public safety, and gutted the cannabis industry."
You know, the activists who proposed Amendment 139 said they are definitely regrouping. They're not going away. They want to, quote, hold big marijuana accountable, end quote. But let's move along again. Lastly, in the week in weed. Let's talk about some of these high-design marijuana shops that are starting to open up across the U.S., Vince.
Yeah, dude, I will always talk pot shops. And your story on this was so interesting. Because it used to be that these businessmen and women opening cannabis shops were so worried about DEA raids and federal seizures that they didn't really put a whole lot of time, money, general effort into the design and layout of their shops. But obviously, with the changing landscape, that's changing too.
You know, these companies are feeling safer, and then the monetary investment comes through. Let's pull up some of these photos so the people watching the show can see what we're talking about. And for those listening to the podcast, check it. You can see all of these pictures on the cannabist.co.
Or watch the show.
Or tune into the show. Give it a try. It's fun. But first up, we have the clinic's new location in Denver. It's a $1 million shop, complete with warm wood tones, massive skylights, an intuitive retail layout, and even a concentrates counter that has on display fresh 50-gram slabs of shatter, wax, live resin, and more. I
love that concentrates bar. It reminds me of a good East Coast pizza shop where you can walk in and see those big pies before you picked it out. People who are drawn to extracts often appreciate the art of the process like I appreciate the art of pizza. They like seeing that finished slab before it's split up into individual grams. So I could see them checking out that giant chunk of live resin and then ordering a couple grams of it from their bud tender.
And that's how it works. It's a very smart sales technique, but the clinic isn't the only shop investing in thoughtful high-end retail design. Check out this shot of Paper and Leaf's shop. That's Paper and Leaf. They're on Bainbridge Island, just outside of Seattle. Ooh. You know, very minimalistic, clean. It looks like an art gallery, but the art here is weed. And here, let's check out another one. We got Bloom, B-L-U-M, a Las Vegas dispensary that wanted its shop to look more like a plastic surgeon's office and not the traditional doctor's office that the state was hoping it would look like.
And check out Good Chem's expansive location in Aurora, Colorado. This shop is a real beaut. And that shop's CEO, Matt Huron, who's been on the show before, by the way, told you that they're going to add a lot of these element designs to their downtown Denver shop, which is just a few blocks away from where I'm standing right now.
Downtown Denver, indeed. Vince, that'll brighten up this stretch of Colfax Avenue, and I think that'll be good. But hey, it's time to bring out our first guest, and he is one of the most vocal hemp entrepreneurs in Colorado and the U.S. It's my pleasure to welcome my friend Morris Beegle to the Cannabist Show. Hey, brother.
What's happening, bud?
Good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you, man.
What a treat, man. We go way back, huh?
Yeah, we do.
Your old life in the music industry and my old life as a music critic, our paths intersect once again.
I know. Intersect with cannabis.
I'm looking forward to talking about this, but Morris, we start every interview here on the Cannabist Show. Indica or sativa? So where are you at these days?
Sativa.
Sativa, okay, yeah.
But, you know, I'm fine with both. Blends.
You don't discriminate?
No, I really don't. I like it always.
But you said sativa, so yeah, I'm curious
that's where I would lean towards.
Yeah.
Just a little more uplifting and chill and get stuff done.
I dig it, man.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, you were in the music industry. How do you describe what you did? You were a record label. You were also distribution and manufacturing. You kind of did it all.
It was kind of a one-stop shop. I'd come from a company called Handelman, which was a large music and video retailer that serviced Kmart, Walmart, Sears, Montgomery Wards, all these big box retailers with music and video product. But I also dabbed around in the indie side of things for your Amoeba Musics and Twist and Shouts and that sort of thing. But when I left Handelman Company, I came back and started Happy Scratch Records, where we did CD manufacturing, printing, product distribution, events, booking, licensing, kind of studio coordination, a one-stop shop.
Yeah, and now you have become similarly a one-stop shop in the hemp world. I know you have multiple businesses. We're going to talk about some of these, some of your outings, but I want to start by talking, why hemp? You were doing well in music, and now you're over on this side of the platform. So why hemp? What was it that brought you over?
So when I moved back to Colorado to start Happy Scratch in '95, there was a store in Fort Collins called the Hemperor's New Clothes.
I remember it.
So in a hemp shop where I started hanging out, and the gal that ran the store, Carolina, she educated me about hemp and cannabis. I joined NORML back then. I read the Jack Hare book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes, and I even made Happy Scratch hemp hats back in '97, '98.
Oh wow, really?
Which and I just did some prototypes. I mean, they were really expensive, and bands didn't want to spend a lot of money for doing shirts and hats and stuff. As far as when it's 2 to 3 times as much doing a hemp thing as it was doing cotton stuff. But that's where I got educated in hemp, and then as from 2004, 2005 through 2010, the music industry really got pummeled. Physical media business, that's where I come from. Making CDs, physical distribution, and then you got Napster, you got MP3.com, then iTunes. I mean, it decimated the physical media business.
Sure.
And,
So you needed a change.
Yeah, I needed a change, and when it was really Amendment 64, there was a clause in there for Colorado farmers to start growing industrial hemp, and I'm like, well, shit, I can transfer my music skills. I can start a hemp merchandise company, do shirts and hats, and I found a hemp paper that we could start printing and doing business cards and posters and some CD packaging. So there was a whole skill set that I had that I could transfer over to starting a hemp company, and then doing events and just trying to, help with awareness and advocacy and spreading the message of, hey, hemp is not marijuana, There's more than 2 things that you can do with it. It's beyond medical, it's beyond getting high and recreational. You can build houses with it, you can make plastics, you can eat it, you can use it cosmetics and, nutrition and, all these other different uses that far outweigh the other side of the plant, in my opinion.
I'm curious how the two shake down in your own personal history. I mean, you worked in the music industry, very cool. You're working in the hemp industry on the forefront of legalization, also very cool. Do you find this new career more gratifying than the last, or?
I can tell you the last 2 years, the amount of relationships and people that I've got to deal with has been like nothing I've ever done before. There's so much amazing energy and so many people pouring everything that they have into this to try to move this forward domestically and globally. So I think it's awesome. And there's a lot of crossover with the marijuana side too. I mean, there's a lot of good people that are in it for the right reasons. And there's a lot of people that are in it for the wrong reasons.
And we do know that. We talk about both of those types of people on the show every week.
But yeah, I find it extremely gratifying with where I'm at right now.
Good for
Just
you,
some
man.
amazing people and amazing energy going on.
I mean, I've known you for almost 15 years. I'm thrilled for you. I'm glad to see you so happy.
I appreciate it.
Speaking of events, you brought up events. You throw a mean event. I've been to some of them over the years. You started the NoCo Hemp Expo, Northern Colorado Hemp Expo, 3-4 years ago. I know the event has grown substantially. Congratulations. But, what do these ever-increasing attendance figures say about all the interest there is right now in American hemp?
Well, we did start it 3 years ago. We just had our 3rd one in April.
Okay.
But in 2014, we did it at a small bar in Windsor called Ricky B's.
I remember the press release, yeah.
330 people. I mean, we sold it out. We had like 15, 20 speakers, good people. Doug Fine debuted his hemp-bound book there and was a keynote.
Doug Fine is a friend of the show.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of his.
Doug is awesome. He's been at every one of them. But we had 330 people at that one. We had 1,250 people last year, and this year we had over 3,000 people show up.
3,000
in 2 days.
Doing it in Loveland.
In
right?
Loveland at the Budweiser Ranch Events Complex, which is a really nice event center.
And there's clearly interest in this, and that interest is growing.
It's growing on the industry side and the consumer side. And we really need to work to reach that consumer side to get people to vote with their pocketbooks. So if you've got $1,000 a month that you're spending on food and clothing and all that stuff, if a couple $100 of that could be allocated towards a hemp-based product, clothing or hemp food or
body care,
exactly.
And where do you see that change happening, especially on the consumer side? because that's so hard to get the message to consumers, especially after decades of misinformation that tied together hemp and cannabis, which, yeah, they're cousins, but they're not all that similar otherwise. So where do you think this is going to happen, the big change with consumers? Do you think it is in body products, is it in foods, or just people starting to learn about the plant's, you know, kind of unique singularity and sustainability?
I think all of the above. You know, people are getting more interested in healthy foods and putting good products on your skin, and you know, just trying to be more natural and organic and less chemical, toxic driven. You
right.
know.
Knowing where their lotions and their foods are coming from, and their weed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we should try to put the best stuff in our bodies and on our bodies as possible, and that's wearing clothes as well. And you know, some of this stuff, you know, this is cotton right here that, you know, it's a highly pesticide-driven crop. And, you know, it's not a very eco-friendly crop. Typical cotton.
Sure.
Organic cotton is better, but you know, hemp is definitely a more environmentally friendly material to wear on your skin.
And Morris, are these hemp shoes?
These are hemp shoes and hemp socks too.
Oh wow, dude!
So,
do you ever have any days where you're just like top to bottom, including underwear, all hemp?
I don't have any hemp underwear, but there's hemp underwear that's out there.
Okay, I'm making an appeal. If anybody knows of any hemp underwear out there, email us, because we need to get Morris some hemp underwear.
I do need some hemp underwear.
The next year's NoCo Hemp Expo. When are we talking? When should we look forward to this event?
It's March 31st and April 1st.
Oh, easy.
So,
and this is not an April Fool's Day joke.
No,
this is happening.
We try to pick that weekend. Last year it was also that we had that first weekend, and it was Easter weekend, and so and it was only one day last year. This year it was 2 days, and Easter weekend, it jumps all over the place. So we try to not do it on that weekend. That's a tough weekend to do events.
That is
Coming from the event business, there's certain weekends you try not to do things on when it comes to holidays and stuff.
Oh, I remember. I remember my old music festival throwing days. Morris, later this month you're throwing another event. You're calling this one Hemp on the Slope. You're bringing together industry leaders, talking about hemp building, hemp farming. Hemp on the Slope in Colbrand, Colorado, July 30th. Tell us about this event. How does this one differ from the other?
Well, this is the last event we had. We had like 130 plus vendors and 75 speakers. We had a major expo.
Sure.
This is a kind of an intro event to the Western Slope. They haven't had anything like it. So we've got probably 25 vendors. It's on a private ranch.
Okay.
That's 200 acres. Aaron, Rydell, Margaret Richardson, Joe Kohler, and Fran McKenzie. They're partners in Salt Creek Hemp Company. They're growing 14 acres this year.
Oh, wow.
They got a beautiful property. You know, they got this big covered horse arena where we're going to set up all the vendors, and we're going to have a big flatbed truck, and we're going to put a PA on there and have hay bales. We're going to have a hemp round table that we're making a table out of hemp that's round that we're going to take to events, and we're going to set people around, and we're going to have conversations around the hemp round table.
I like it. So in a way, is this kind of like just a new event, similar but for a different area of the state?
Correct. And it's I mean, and you know, we're looking to have 300 to 500 people. We're not trying to have a ton of people. We want to get farmers in the area out there so they can find out, hey, does this make sense for us to consider replacing our hay crops or rotating it in through our crops? Is this something that we should pay attention to? Can we make money growing hemp?
Oh, nice.
And that's what these events are about, is to educate, you know, the agricultural community of, hey, this is now available. Can you make more money on this than you can on corn or alfalfa or hay? Or can you put it in your mix? Is there a market here? And we think there is a market.
To educate farmers, yeah. And I know for people who are, you know, Denver-centric, Northern Colorado-centric, you're also going to be at a music festival the weekend after, right? You throw out those details super quick.
Arise Festival in Loveland. We've got Ziggy Marley headlining. It's a conscious festival, 100+ bands. Theme camps. We've got a NoCo Hemp Village. There will be a dozen of us underneath this 40 by 60 pavilion.
Oh, nice.
They've got a yoga tent and a, you know, art tent and 7 stages and that's 3-day festival. It's awesome.
That's early August, yeah.
August 5th, 6th, and 7th.
Okay, well, cool.
AriseFestival.com.
All All right, man. We're going to have you back very shortly to talk a little bit more, but until then, thank you so much for coming out. It's good to see you, brother.
Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. I want to throw to our very own Wizard of Weed. Of course, that's Professor Pat for this week's entry in the new Cannabist lexicon.
Trichome. Holding the majority of the cannabinoid content in the plant, the trichomes are crystalline structures which coat the plant's bract and leaf surfaces. Looking much like a mushroom when magnified, the head contains the majority of the cannabinoid content and essential oils, but the stalk also has some value. To hear that in a sentence, the trichome heads on this sour D are huge. I can't wait to see what the high is like.
Thank you for that, Professor Pat. All right. Our next guest is also making her first appearance on the show. She has been covering business in Colorado for more than a dozen years, but now she's writing about weed exclusively and full-time for the Cannabist. It's my pleasure to introduce you all, our readers and viewers and listeners, to our very own national policy and business reporter, Alicia Wallace. Alicia, how's it going?
All right, Rick, how are you doing?
Thanks so much for joining us.
Sure.
This is so fun. Usually you're sitting right there working on a story, but now you're in here.
I am.
Okay. So Alicia, hard question first.
Okay.
Sativa or indica, Miss Pot Policy Writer?
Well, this might disappoint some, but as a non-consumer, I would have to say my preference would be for a fine craft beer like a Pliny the Elder.
Oh, that is a fine craft beer too. Isn't that pretty rare?
It is now. All the hipsters and everybody keeps buying it, so I can't get it anymore. So.
Well, it's worth adding that Alicia has been writing for our beer blog, First Drafts, for years now, right? As well. So
yes. Well, yeah, at least
now your beat is weed and beer. You might have a better job title than I do. Alicia, you've been writing for newspapers in Colorado for a long time. I said earlier, more than a dozen years. Tell us some of the bigger business news stories that you've covered in that time.
Sure. Well, I was at the Daily Camera up in Boulder for many years before coming to the Post, and there I wrote about the natural and organic products industry pretty heavily. And
big in Colorado, very big in Boulder.
Yeah, very big in Boulder. And so one of the big stories was the Whole Foods acquisition of Wild Oats, and then
that was big.
Yep. And then there I wrote a lot about the emergence of craft beer as an industry, and then.
And Boulder's being a major hub in that.
Oh yeah. Boulder Beer is home to the very first craft brewery in Colorado, the Boulder Beer Company. And then most recently, I've been writing a ton about Sports Authority and the Mile High Stadium naming rights and
bankruptcy. Lots of fun, right?
Chapter 11 is so fun. But and then also, definitely over that time, I've written about the growth of the pot business as well, and that's include issues such as employment, banking, and the like.
Isn't it amazing? I love that marijuana it's just another business story. I remember when we first started the Cannabist. I remember explaining this to my mom. At the time she was asking me, hey, what do you mean you're going to be a marijuana editor? What does that mean? And I was like, oh, this is an industry, just like the airlines. We need to cover it as such. And once she heard that, she got it, and she's like, great, okay, I hope you take the job. And I said, yeah, I am going to take the job. But, let's talk about pot banking.
Sure.
I would love it if you could catch us up, because you have been one of our main writers on that beat. Where exactly are we at in this debate surrounding marijuana banking and this industry?
Well, we're still at a standstill right now, unfortunately. Still. Yeah, it's, marijuana on a national level, on a federal level, is still illegal. So there are no firm regulations on banking. And so as such, it's still an all-cash business. Billions are traded on a daily, yearly basis here, and the product is sometimes more valuable than the cash itself. So it's kind of on the onus of the operators to invest heavily in security.
Sure.
And that includes hiring personnel. And unfortunately, recently we had the very tragic episode of of a security guard being murdered during the line of duty at an Aurora dispensary.
Right.
And
15
during the
miles from
robbery,
here.
yeah, and that prompted. That spurred some lawmakers to make another plea, another effort to eliminate the penalties for banks to serve the industry, but some House GOP members ended up thwarting that at the end, and there are banks that want to work with businesses. Fourth Corner Credit Union.
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that 10 times fast.
I know, right?
I wrote about them most recently in April. They actually got a state charter, but ran into some issues with the Fed, and so their fight is still tied up in the court system. They're moving up to higher courts now.
And Fourth Corner sued. They sued the Fed. They sued NCUA, the Credit Union Association, and they lost both of those cases. Right now, now is the appeal.
Yes, they're in the appeals court stage.
And do we know what chance this little, I mean, non-existent really, credit union stands against the Federal Reserve?
It's tough to say now, just because it does remain illegal on a federal level, and it's still on the Controlled Substances Act. However, the folks at Fourth Corner point to various other cases that have happened within the past year that they say that make them hopeful.
Oh, well. Of course, it's an issue we're going to be covering very passionately here. I know our viewers and listeners are, this is a big one for them. So I'm excited to talk about this because this is one of your first big pieces that you've written for the Cannabist. It's the definitive guide on what states are voting on medical, recreational in November. You know, we've heard probably 10, 15 state names thrown around, but really it takes a lot to actually get that ballot on the ballot, that initiative on the ballot. So walk us through your story, your reporting. What are some of these states that we absolutely know will be voting on recreational marijuana in November?
Sure, and it's still it's still a moving target for some.
Okay.
But the ones we know for rec are, and forgive me if I miss one, but so it's California, Maine, Massachusetts, as well as Nevada. And then on the medical side is Arkansas and Florida. And then the ones waiting in the wings, these are the ones that still have signatures that need to be approved, or there's lawsuits that are filed against them, is Arizona, Missouri, and Montana is a fun, well, not necessarily fun for other people involved, but an interesting one.
It's fascinating.
It's Montana does have medical. However, those regulations, the laws are pretty strict. So there's a bill, there's an initiative to help expand those a little bit to make the medical dispensaries more accessible to others in the end, to more residents. And then on the other side, there's a bill that would just strip that entirely out of that would strip the medical marijuana law. You know,
in Montana.
Yep.
Wow. And what are the big ones that we're talking about here? I'm guessing, of course, California is the king of all legalization battles. They've said no to recreational before. They just got a couple major investments in that this week, the pro-legalization side. But so talk a little bit about that. Also, what's the big one on the medical side?
Sure. Well, California, yes, you do have they have the backing of Sean Parker from Napster, who's just plunked millions into that. And
don't you love that Sean Parker will forever be known as Napster? Whatever else that guy does, he brought us Napster. Helped destroy Morris's business.
He did help destroy my business.
Oh man, thanks a lot, Sean Parker. But gave us MP3s for free, which was great as a teenager. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
It's all right.
California, Sean Parker.
California, and then in terms of just the sheer size of California and its prominence, it is looked at as a potential linchpin for what could be a nationwide movement to legalize. So I know a lot of people are really focused on, well, if California goes, what will that mean? Where else will the dominoes fall?
Right, and that is the big domino. World's 8th largest economy, by the way. California.
That was 6th.
Oh, well, I read 8th in a pretty reputable source, but I don't know. That was also a year ago. So
6 on the internet. So.
Well, mine was also on the internet. It was just U.S. News and World Report or something. But you know, on the medical side of this conversation, Florida's big, right? I mean, we're just because of a population, a massive and also aging population that is investing their own millions into traditional pharmaceuticals that could potentially be, some of that could potentially be funneled to medical marijuana, yeah?
Certainly, and I think also Arkansas is looked at as a unique case too, because that is a key state in the South, and you got to wonder if maybe others are looking around there, see, well, if Arkansas passes, where that might lead other states as well.
And what's fascinating about what you just said too is, like, the South is almost this impenetrable, you know, has this force field around it. Sure, there's some CBD only laws in there, but yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of medical marijuana in the South United States. So that's big. We're definitely keeping an eye on Arkansas, and it's also fascinating to think that Arkansas voters are definitely voting on medical marijuana in November. Wow, we're going to see where that goes. Morris, I want to bring you back into the conversation. I want to talk design and aesthetics with both of you. Two very smart people with awesome experiences on the couch. As Vince and I were talking earlier about my story from last week, some of these marijuana shops are investing $1 million+ into individual retail locations all over the U.S., and this isn't limited to pot shops either. It's, you know, it's the packaging of edibles and concentrates. It's, you know, the way hemp businesses are presenting themselves. So, you know, there's a new hemp spa in Longmont that I just did a freelance story about. That's fascinating. Everything in there is hemp, including the tea that you're greeted with when you walk through the door, the seeds on the counter, as well as the CBD infused oil they're using. But Morris, are you seeing this in your experiences in hemp and cannabis?
Well, yeah, I think, you know, now that it's becoming more mainstream, you know, you want to provide a shopping environment that people enjoy. And, you know, you look at where things were 5-6 years ago on the medical side, and you walk into a medical dispensary, it's really pretty the hole in a wall, a lot of it. Some people, you know, had nice shops. And coming from the music industry, if you look at it from your Twist and Shouts to your Tower Records to your Virgin Records, you know, Virgin had a beautiful store here. You know, the aesthetics in those stores, you know, it's there to, you know, entice people. Wow, this is great, I'm gonna buy.
Well, and that's a great perspective, because ultimately it's this newly legal industry mirroring that of traditional industry, right? And they're like, oh, maybe if we abide by these principles of good-looking retail design, then customers will spend more time here, and they'll want to come back, and they'll spend more money. This is what it's all about, right?
Absolutely. Well, and you look at the microbrew market too. There's another one where you look at all these little breweries, you go in there and you got, you know, a dozen beers to drink from, and then they've got their pint glasses and their t-shirts and their hats, and it's cool little small places that you can go drop, you know, 20, 30, 50, 100, couple $100. And people love to walk in there and spend time if they're treated well and it looks nice. Absolutely.
Isn't there a great line in Spaceballs?
Merchandising.
Yeah. Merchandising.
Hot shop, the t-shirt.
Alicia, clearly craft brewing is close to your heart. Is this something that you're starting to see in this other industry, mimicking craft brewing and others?
Oh, certainly. I mean, as the industry, I mean, it's certainly growing up. And you see, just in terms of the design alone, you see it's softwood, there's record, there's music playing in the background. It looks like an art gallery, some of the places that I've walked into. And, and it's come a long way. I think it's just it's the natural progression as niche turns to mainstream, everything gets a little bit slicker. And the consumer is as well. The consumer is growing up as well. They're becoming more discerning. And the added competition, you got to step up your game. And, you know, we saw that certainly with the evolution of the craft beer industry is even now, I mean, there's 4,000 of them. So all of the old guys are redoing their packaging, and some are even redoing some of their recipes as well to try to stand out from the crowd. And so I think it'll be interesting to watch, not just from a dispensary design perspective, but even from a packaging standpoint as well, product packaging.
Absolutely.
What folks will have to do to be able to stand out in the market. But
Sure.
like with anything else, it comes down to the product in the end.
And that packaging part of this conversation is important. I remember being at the launch party last year for Snoop Dogg's brand, Leafs by Snoop, and you know, there was the big unveil, and Snoop Dogg comes up from the basement and pulls the curtain, and there's the product line, and it's our first look at it, and there was a bunch of journalists and lawyers in this house in the suburbs, but the first thing that stood out was these edibles, these concentrates are packaged in such a way that it was almost new. You know, a lot of people hadn't invested that kind of money, that kind of resources into making this look attractive. You know, so I think it's all a big thing, and it's fascinating how it's filtering into hemp as well. So,
Oh yeah.
you guys, it is time for the pot quiz. We close every Cannabist show with a quiz on current events, and it's always a good time. It's always a good check-in on, like, how much have I been paying attention this week? So, Morris, we're checking with you, starting with you. If you get the incorrect answer, Alicia can steal the point, and vice versa. So, Morris, what state just dropped the cost of its medical marijuana licenses from $75 to $5?
Colorado.
Good guess, but ours are ours are more than $75, I think. Yeah, no, not Colorado, but Alicia, do you have a possible answer for the steal?
Just because I've been immersed in all these, looking at every single 50 state and
yeah, that's true.
Montana.
Montana for the win. Okay, Morris, you're gonna have a fight on your hands here. Alicia, next question. What former embattled NFL player this week said he was drug tested by the league, quote, at least 500 times?
This guy killed my fantasy teams in some years. Ricky Williams.
Oh, man.
Yeah, he disappointed me in past years.
He killed your fantasy teams?
Yeah, well, I always managed to pick the running backs that perform well the year before, and then, yeah, my team is usually where they end their career.
So remind me to not pick the same running back that you pick this coming season,
exactly.
I guess. Who are you thinking about picking, by the way, just so we know?
Ezekiel Elliott.
There you go. Good choice right there.
I hope I didn't doom that guy's career.
Sorry, Ezekiel. Alicia just ruined your season.
I hope he has a good year.
Oh, me too.
What team is he?
Cowboys.
Oh, cool. You're a Cowboys fan?
Yep. Oh, I shouldn't say this on your show, probably.
Too late. I know. Oh, man. We'll take care of this afterward.
Yeah.
Morris, next question. Federal prosecutors are investigating the wife of a gubernatorial candidate in what U.S. state for the alleged possession of marijuana?
I guess I haven't been paying attention this week.
Well, you're running a couple businesses, so.
Oh. Who's running for governor?
I'll give you guys both a hint. It might surprise you. That's the hint.
Yeah. In what state?
Yep, in what state?
Maine.
No. Good guess, though. Spirited.
Yeah.
Alicia.
The Beehive State, Utah.
Damn, she has been immersed in these state issues. Yeah. Okay, this is a very lopsided and unfair quiz. Morris will bring you back.
I should be on that metal show with Eddie Trunk is what I should be. Okay.
All right, Alicia, the last question of the quiz. The New Approach PAC just donated $750,000 to help legalize recreational marijuana in California, bringing its total contributions to the campaign to $1.5 million. Name the late business titan and his company, ideally, whose trust funds the New Approach PAC is made of.
Oh, goodness. I'm going to get a pay cut because I'm going to miss this.
Yeah, you missed one question in the pot quiz and you're going to get a pay cut.
Let's see, I know I read this within everything I was reading this week, but So let's see, late business tycoon. My mind's running a blank right now.
All right. No answer. And
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. Oh, that's a good guess.
It'd be ironic with him kicking everybody out of the App Store still.
I know, right? This was not Steve Jobs. This is a gentleman, a late gentleman named Peter Lewis. He owned Progressive Insurance and has given millions to legalization efforts across the globe. And now, even in death, he's still funding legalization efforts. So
good for him.
Yeah, fascinating. You guys, I so appreciate the conversation, you both coming out today. What a blast. I'm very, very appreciative. I want to thank our guests, Morris Beegle and Alicia Wallace, but most importantly, thanks to you all for watching, listening. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and also give us a review. Tell us what you think. Producer Vince reads every single one of those. I promise you.
I cry myself to sleep most nights reading them.
Poor Vince. You know, I'm Ricardo Baca, joined by Vince, the rest of the crew. Have a great day, everyone, and we will see you next week.
And I say it again, ain't afraid to get in. I be going for the jackpot with ace in my hand, I'm raw.